And that is the seventh player award. The Bruins release their nominees for this award. And if you're unfamiliar with it, it's every single year in the last home game of the year. It's voted on by the fans, but they vote on which Bruin went above and beyond expectations throughout the course of the season. So the nominees this year are Fraser Minten, Marat Khusnutdinov, Mark Kastelic, and Jonathan Aspirot. Now, I'll say this right now. I think all four of those players are very worthy of winning this award in their own right. I think they've all been fantastic players this year. And, there's even a couple of other guys that you could have as nominees, but ultimately, I do think that these are the four most appropriate ones. And I'll just read off their cases real quick. Fraser Minten, 21 years old, first full season in the NHL. He's got 14 goals, 15 assists, 29 points in 59 games. It's an 82 game pace of 40 points. Hasn't missed a game yet. Marat Khusnutdinov, 23 years old. He's got 12 goals, 14 assists, 26 points in 54 games. He's on pace for 37 points in 77 games, but it's an 82 game pace of 40 points. So right there with Minten. Mark Kastelic, 26 years old, 9 goals, 8 assists, 17 points in 59 games. It's an 82 game pace of 24 points. Okay. So you might hear those stats in his age and say, well, what's so award worthy about that? Well, it's the fact that he's a fourth line guy, right? I mean, he was traded to Boston in the Linus Ullmark deal, and which also sent Boston a first round draft pick, which turned it into Dean Letourneau. So that doesn't really get talked about very much in Boston, about how now that Letourneau is turning into quite the prospect, it's kind of swept under the rug that was part of the Ullmark trade. But ultimately, it's a story regarding Kastelic. It's a story about a fourth line guy who's performing at a little bit higher clip. 24 points for a fourth liner it's not astronomical. I would say it's a little bit higher than the average fourth liner, but it's not like it's a 30-point season. But nonetheless, he's been a good player, and he deserves to be a nominee for sure. And then lastly, there's Jonathan Aspirot. Now, if you've listened to me on this show before, which we're now approaching about 2 months in, or on the Skate podcast for WEEI, I have been a huge advocate of Jonathan Aspirot since the first game that he played for the Bruins this season. Now, I watched him during training camp, and I didn't know who he was. I'll never lie to people and say, "Oh my God, I've been watching Aspirot in the minors for years." No, I had no idea who he was, just like all of you, with all due respect. But I remember watching this guy who was ultra competitive and taking really good angles. Then he was a good skater and a stocky guy, and he was physical during training camp. And I said, "Who is this?" Now, I didn't think he was going to make the team because, again, if he was anybody notable, then you would have thought you'd read about him or heard about him, right? I just thought he was some sort of, veteran journeyman camp invite, which kind of what he was. But I didn't think anything of it because I just didn't. I thought he was going to Providence, the first chance that, the Bruins could send him down, and now is that. But since getting called up, his first game in Boston, I've been all over it, and I've loved his angles. I loved his physicality. I love his stability back there. He keeps things simple, and he's physical, and he competes hard. And those guys, they're motherfuckers to play against. They really are. And I've just been a huge fan of his. And he never played a game in the NHL until this season. And again, it wasn't on opening night. It was like a month into the year where he first got his call up. So 26 years old, he leads the Bruins in plus minus. Now, I know that plus minus is a layered statistic because it accounts for being on the ice at all sorts of situations and whatnot. But still, if you're leading the team in something, it's not a bad thing, right? Especially if it's something like plus minus. He's got 8 points in 39 games this year. It's a 82 game pace of 17 points. So again, you're not looking at him to be, you know, Charlie McAvoy back there in terms of offensive production from the blue line. But speaking of McAvoy, he's been on his pair. They've been a really solid D pair for the better part of a month now, right? And again, for a player who nobody knew what his name was heading into this season, to now being Charlie McAvoy's defense partner on your top pair, and he's leading the team in plus minus. He's 26 years old. He never played a game in the NHL until this year. In my eyes, he is the absolute epitome of somebody who has gone above and beyond expectations. I think that Jonathan Aspirot, I would be very happy for him if he won that award. I think he's a great story. However, this is a fan voted award, and I cannot deny that Fraser Minten, being 21 years old, he's a rookie in the truest sense of now. Aspero's a rookie too, I suppose, but Minten is, a true rookie in the sense of he's 5 years younger than Aspero. He's 21 years old. And I think between Minten and Khusnutdinov, I think the award goes to Minten because they've both been excellent, but Minten's younger and they're on the same 82 game point pace. So I just think that he gets the edge because he's a little bit younger. I think Kastelic is a good story, but I don't think he's going to win this award. So for me, I think it comes down to Minten versus Aspero, right? And I do think that Minten is he's a little bit more marketable, right? He's younger. He's a forward. He's he's got the offensive production to go along with it. He's a center iceman, and he's been playing a very mature two-way game at his age. And again, to be on pace for 40 points in your first full year as a 21-year-old, and you got him for Brandon Carlo, along with a first-round pick from Toronto, which currently is a 10th overall pick in the draft. Minten, to me, I think he's the favorite, and I won't complain at all if Fraser Minten wins this award. I think it makes total sense. And I know there's some Bruins fans out there and hockey fans that think, the award's silly and who cares and whatnot. And you look at some of the guys who've won the award in the past. Some of them went on to be great Bruins, like Brad Marchand. Some of them went on to become offensively anemic and one of the worst trades of all time for the Oilers and Trent Frederick. So, it is what it is. It's just a fun thing to talk about. But I would love to see Aspero win it. I just think that I think he's won the fan base over because of how hard he works. And I think it's between those two. But if I had to guess, I do think it's going to go to Minten. But let me ask you this. If you're somebody out there who thinks Minten should win, I'll ask you this question. Did you know Fraser Minten's name before the season? And did you know Jonathan Aspero's name before the season? I know the answer is going to be yes and no. So in that sense, it's like, who went above and beyond expectations? It's got to be the guy who nobody knew, right? Like, literally nobody knew him. I don't know. I guess we'll see how the fans vote, but